Now, an ex-royal staff member has opened up about his time working at Buckingham Palace, claims that out of all of the royals that he catered for, Prince Andrew was difficult and more demanding than others. I mean, he's certainly not getting a good rap.
Behind the gilded gates of Royal Lodge, Prince Andrew lives a life of quiet exile, a prince without a purpose in a palace that has closed its doors. But according to a former palace staffer, now speaking exclusively to Royal Family Daily, the real story isn't about his present isolation. It's about the stark, coded warnings that were circulating in the corridors of Buckingham Palace and Windsor long before the world ever heard the names Virginia Giuffre or Ghislaine Maxwell. This account doesn't deal in courtroom evidence, but in institutional memory. The chilling day-to-day unease that became part of the job for those who worked in his orbit. This source, a former mid-level operational staffer with duties across multiple royal households between 2000 and 2012, paints a picture of a parallel protocol. With other principals, the Queen, Charles, everything was explicit, by the book, they explain. With the Duke of York, there was a second shadow rulebook. It was never written down. It was passed on in hushed tones, usually to new, young, female staff or temporary hires for his sprawling parties at Sunninghill. The phrases were always careful. The Duke requires particular discretion. Ensure you're partnered up during clearing operations. Be mindful of your positioning. It was all implication, but the message was crystal clear to anyone listening. The operational fallout was a constant, low-grade friction in an otherwise flawlessly run machine. Junior staff rotas for events at Andrew's residences, or even larger palace gatherings where he was a guest, would see mysterious, last-minute annotations. A senior footman would suddenly materialise to handle tray service for his particular corner. Female aides were subtly steered towards duties in the central, well-trafficked kitchens rather than in the more private antechambers when he was present. This wasn't a conspiracy, the staffer insists, but a persistent, nagging management issue, a reputational liability that required exhausting, perpetual vigilance. The goal was containment, not confrontation. But this system of whispered cautions was built on a foundation of gossip and rumour that swirled around Andrew for years. Beyond the now-known Epstein Association, palace insiders traded stories about his explosive temper with valets, his demanding and often financially opaque requests of the Privy Purse Office, and his entourage. There were murmurs of cash payments, envelopes discreetly handed to assistants to secure last-minute invitations for certain businessmen to his events. One particularly persistent, unverified rumour, cited by two separate biographers and often discussed in staff quarters, involved a member of his security team being dispatched in the pre-dawn hours to a private members' club in Mayfair to retrieve a personally signed item, a story that underscored a pattern of carelessness. This background noise made the eruption of the Epstein scandal not a shock, but a horrific confirmation. The staffer describes the atmosphere in the palace offices in the wake of Epstein's 2008 conviction and subsequent 2010 release. The old, vague discretion memos in your head suddenly read like grim prophecies, they said. People who had processed strange invoices for private jet charters or logged unexplained security consultant fees started looking at each other differently. The anxiety was less about specific knowledge and more about the terrifying scale of what they didn't know. The liability had just gone global. The palace's strategy shifted from casual management to active damage control. According to the staffer, a noticeable buffer of older, male and highly trusted communications and private office staff was placed around Andrew for official engagements. His schedule was quietly pruned, with more private time and fewer high-profile public appearances that required complex logistical support from skeptical junior teams. The goal was to minimise points of friction and potential exposure, But this insulating effect, some believe, only emboldened Andrew's sense of impunity, leading directly to the catastrophic misjudgment of the 2019 Newsnight interview. That interview was the fracture point. Internally, it was seen as a catastrophic failure of the very buffer system designed to protect him. There were two reactions, the staffer recounts. The majority, including some deeply frustrated senior courtiers, saw it as the inevitable result of a man who'd never been truly held to account, finally facing a question he couldn't bully his way past. The other, smaller faction around him descended into paranoid blame, targeting the Palace Press Office for not preventing it, the BBC for treachery, even his own lawyers. The institution's response, the stripping of military patronages and the HRH style, was swift and surgical. It was the monarchy publicly severing a gangrenous limb to save the body. Andrew's current exile is the living consequence of that surgery, and the financial noose is tightening. His fight for Royal Lodge is a desperate battle for more than a roof. It's for a shred of status, and crucially, for the sovereign, grant-funded maintenance that comes with it. Rumours, fueled by reports from reputable outlets, suggest King Charles has drawn a definitive line, refusing to use funds from the Duchy of Lancaster to subsidise his brother's lifestyle or any further legal liabilities. The millions from the late Queen's private estate for the Virginia Giuffre settlement are widely seen as the final, painful bailout. Now, navigating this frozen wilderness, Andrew is reportedly deploying his last remaining assets, his family. Unverified insider reports suggest he is strategically leveraging the position of his daughters, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, who maintain warm relations with the King and the Waleses. The implied argument is one of family unity and mercy. Meanwhile, tensions within Royal Lodge itself are rumoured to be rising. Speculation persists about a fraught financial arrangement with ex-wife Sarah Ferguson, who benefits from the shared address for her own media ventures, even as the cost of upkeep for the vast estate spirals. Some reports claim Charles's team has offered alternative, smaller housing, but Andrew views accepting it as a final, humiliating surrender. The former staffer's account ends with a damning perspective. They argue the warnings were never primarily about safeguarding staff. They were about safeguarding the crown. Every adjusted roster, every veiled instruction was a small stitch in a curtain, meant to keep Andrew's world separate from the monarchy's gleaming public image. The tragedy, they imply, is that the palace became so adept at sewing that curtain, they failed to see the inferno brewing behind it. Andrew's story is now one of isolated ignominy, but the lingering question for the institution is one of accountability. When does a culture of discreet management become a culture of passive enablement? And how many whispers must be ignored before they coalesce into a single, devastating roar? The shadows in the corridors have stories to tell. For more uncensored insider accounts and the narratives the palace machinery tries to suppress, subscribe to Royal Family Daily and hit the notification bell. We connect the dots they'd rather leave scattered. Let us know in the comments. Who, in your view, bears the ultimate responsibility for the years of whispered warnings going unheeded at the highest levels?